Hello everyone and welcome. This is Rachel, the Modern Shaman. Thanks for joining me for another YouTube video of the week. If you are new to this channel, I always invite you to check out my website. That's at themodernshaman.net. There are a ton of resources there for anyone who vibes with this channel and would like to follow up with me personally. You can check into personal sessions where we meet one-on-one either here in my office or on the phone or via Zoom, teleconferencing, as well as all of my classes. And they are available on online modules, just downloadable. When you are ready to learn, all of that is there for you. Also, I will say, if you'd like to send in your questions for these exact videos, then what you would do is go to the website, go to that contact form, type in your question, and just mention that it is for a YouTube video. I would love to hear from you all. All right, I'm going to dive into the question of today. Okay, and this was sent in from a YouTube viewer. Okay, is it common to have died as a young child several times in your past lives? Or is it rare for an individual? So past life trauma or past life experiences that were in some way impactful to your current life. Let me just give you the truth. You know what? Our history as humans on this planet is quite brutal. It's very brutal, to be honest with you. And I mean, even if you just look back statistically in the 1800s, about 50% of people didn't make it to their 5th birthday. I mean, they died as a child. There were just so many diseases and difficulties for those that were young. So I think that's very common. I'd say about half of the human species that was alive on this earth previously would have died as a young child. So yes, that is a common experience. I mean, even like poverty, that's also a very common experience. Extreme poverty, like people dying from poverty, and starvation and cold and difficulty through the physical form of just being on this earth and survival skills. If you look back at our history, and this is not even metaphysical, you know, this is just the history of our species on this planet. Probably about 80% of people in the, I'm going to use 1800s because I used that just a little bit ago, died from poverty. And I'd say about 80% of my clients, when I do past life reviews and we go through lifetimes and kind of, typically it involves a death scene or sequence because those are very impactful moments that we carry with us. I'd say the top 5, let's just go through that. The top 5 past life experiences that still hold impact on an individual today, I'd say the number 1 is poverty. And this is commonly seen today in those that have almost like irrational fears around money. Maybe they have money, but they fear that they're going to run out. It won't last that long. Maybe you're retired and you're like, I'm going to outlive my money. Or maybe you have some set aside or in your business is doing well, but there's almost like a panic or an underlying irrational anxiety connected to money. Typically, when I do past life reviews with those people, it's a telltale sign that they have had multiple lifetimes where they've been in extreme poverty, died from poverty, or just had very significant impact from money and the lack of money. That's the top one, I would say. Number 2 would be like extreme relationship trauma. So if you think about the evolution of our species spiritually, we evolve from very primal relationships and very primal experience. And so these are kind of the 7 deadly sins, like extreme experiences with betrayal, so trust issues and jealousy and greed, and these playing out in a way that is absolutely brutal. You know, family members killing family members stealing lovers, and like very, very close relationships that were pivotal and very just fundamental to your soul. When we look at past lives, that probably number 2, second most common impact, or almost like, I would say like just the most significant type of impact that I see in past life experiences that still affects people today, is those extreme relationship traumas where the primal experience of relationships was triggered and was developed over past lives of just negative experiences through relationships. That's just how we evolve. Unfortunately, we go through things where it puts that piece of sand in the oyster, and man, it just scratches and scratches and scratches at us until it evolves into that pearl. So that's very common. I would say number 3 would be what you talked about, fears with children, like death as a young child or death through childbirth, just fears associated with the innocence of children being taken advantage of, or death. And so if you are a mother, this is very, very common, like an irrational or a very deep-seated, and this is how you can tell when it's past life. It is so deep-seated. It's like you don't know why you have those fears. You just have those fears. They just exist inside of you. And to me, just from a long time of doing this, those are telltale signs that you've got some past life trauma there, where you had experiences of watching children be abused, pass away, or you yourself had that experience of being taken advantage of. The innocence of children may be very, very close to your heart. I would say the 4th most common past life kind of issue that's still affecting is war. And this kind of worldwide war, probably about 50, sometimes 60% of the population died through the brutality of war. Just again, over our history as a species on this planet. And so many of us are still impacted by that. We have fears, deep-seated fears about that, about people going away, never coming back. These are the abandonment kind of issues that people are born with, that essentially came in from previous life experiences of having someone go away. And usually this was for a war or some sort of economic need, and then they never returned, promised and never returned. Or just the brutality of the war, being in it and seeing and having PTSD kind of inlaid into our DNA from those previous life experiences, being a part of a war-torn country or being amidst all of that extreme turmoil and emotional trauma. And then I would say the 5th most common is environmental factors, like these environmental catastrophes that happen, like memories of being in a flood, memories of avalanche and earthquake and extreme environmental disasters. There's also a lot of people that had this common experience on this earth, and they come in with a fear that's like irrational of being in the water or being in deep sea, and the water's in deep sea, or even the sky, like solar flares, like asteroid fears. I see that quite often. I see earthquake fears, tornado fear. I mean, this is also very common as a deep-seated, irrational fear that, again, is typically a big green light as to where our past lives have impacted us that still needs healing today. So many of those aspects, like I said, these are very common because most of us have had lives here on this earth previous to our current life. And that still impacts us today. If you've ever watched my videos, I talk about how time doesn't really exist outside of this earthly experience. And so if you take that into consideration, it's as if these lives are happening concurrent to one another. And when we swallow down that pill of like, how can my past lives and my future lives kind of be happening all at once, right? Well, they are if we are outside of this human perspective of linear existence and imagine as if we're in the spirit realm and we're able to multidimensionally almost be like a television screen that has multiple channels all on the same screen, right? So we're living out multiple experiences all in the same multidimensional expression concurrently. And when these lives have frequencies that match up, kind of like harmony of songs or music notes, when we have similar emotional chords, think of musical chords, right, that match up or link up, then the resonance there is doubled, like the amplification of sound. And so this is how we see the emotional trauma of past lives still impacting us today in a major amplified way. The extreme fear or the difficult relationship issues, or the like not being able to shake the underlying fear or thought that something bad is going to happen in one way, shape, or form. Essentially, it is as if the negative frequencies or chords are being played simultaneously in another life expression that you're a part of. And when that links up with something in this life, maybe you have had a very, very extreme experience of betrayal in a past life. I mean, and think of these drama shows that we see on TV, you know, where the king literally chooses your sister as another wife, or you can't have children and then just decides, I'm gonna shack up with your closest handmaiden who's been with you since you were like 2, like a sister too. There's just very extreme experiences when we look back at history. If you've had something like that and that chord is playing, and then you just have a casual dating relationship now, but there is a similar chord of possible betrayal. Maybe he looks at a friend of yours in a way that makes you think, oh my gosh, it may strum that same chord, and then it's amplified by the fact that in a concurrent life, past life, in another timeline or another expression, and you've had that same experience, it's amplified out, and the volume and the impact of that emotional experience is like, oh, to you. And they're like, gosh, why are you so jealous? Or why are you so, because you've got all of this emotional energy still laden in essentially the DNA or the memory of your body. And it's also stored in your muscular memory, your emotional memory. So there's a lot that we're playing with as humans here on this earth, trying to process and evolve as souls. So cut yourself some slack. We're doing the best we can, and we are evolving as a species. We are. We've come a long way. I know that it's easy to look at where we are and be like, what the heck are we thinking? We're in such a place sometimes of turmoil and what seems like judgment and aggressive behavior. But if we look back at our past human history, we have come a long way, all right? And I am one that believes that we are on the right path and headed in the right direction as souls on our evolutionary journey. So heading back home, right? I'm going to sign off here with this video, and I hope that you guys join me next week for another. Blessings.